Cannabis Conversations. We are Cannabis Conversations. It's Tuesday, March 3rd. I am Dr. Otto Dude, aka Dan, here with my good friend Muchacho, aka Mondo. And last time we were talking about edibles and how to do them and what they do and all that sort of stuff. So today, Mondo, what do we have in store for us?
Well, we're talking about weed. It's a weed show. And I feel like, everyone's curious when they're trying new things. If you've, never tried weed or you're a long-time consumer even, you want to know what's available.
You're a long-time consumer, but you want to know what's available. You just got the guy down the street.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
But we're not going to the guy down the street, Mondo. We are going to the dispensary.
Dispensaries.
The grocery store for weed.
Yeah. Buy weed at the store, like Andre Nicotina says.
Yes. Like Andre Nicotina says. You're wondering what's available? I want to tell you what isn't available.
True.
We're just going to start with the most basic of weed, which is not weed, it's cannabis.
Cannabis.
And this form of cannabis is going to be called flower. So flower is your just like plucked right out the ground form of cannabis. And in the store, you're kind of going to find flower in a top shelf, middle shelf, bottom shelf format. And that's just kind of like you have your liquor. You have top shelf liquor, bottom shelf liquor, liquor. So
for sure,
cannabis is kind of divvied up the same way. In general, though, when we say top shelf, bottom shelf, we're just talking about the price tiers of weed.
For sure.
Cannabis, and that kind of corresponds with the quality as well.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like, you go spend money, you're going to get what you pay for. But people should know, it's like alcohol, If you buy the best bottle, it doesn't mean it's going to be the best bottle.
Yeah, don't buy into the hype kind of, right?
Yeah, it could, you could not like the taste of the bottle. It could be a good bottle, you just not your preference,
Well, fuck alcohol. We're here for weed.
For sure.
So yeah, top shelf isn't always going to be the best tasting. It's not always going to get you the highest.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get bamboozled. It's not always the best weed is the most expensive.
Okay. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a name game.
Note that. For sure. Yeah, name game, brandage. What people are saying is good. So, what are the, differences in, actually, between mids and lower grade buds or flower?
So, so your flower comes in the form of buds, basically. So you're not wrong to say buds. You can say nugs. Sometimes you could say colas if it's a big enough nug itself. Buds is good. So, in general, the differences between the levels, your mid-grade you're going to have all over the place. It's probably going to be the most popular weed you'll buy as a mid-grade cannabis. So don't be afraid to get a mid-grade, It's a lot of times the bang for the buck, sort of, Producers and retailers realize people are looking at the numbers. They want the highest numbers for the lowest cost. So they're trying to, work with you and get you what you want. So they're not just like, oh, here's some garbage, take it, and then you could pay top dollar for it. Not all the time. They realize you're not going to come back if they do that to you. So, mid-grade in dispensaries is usually pretty good. It's not always a name brand that's producing it, and sometimes they don't have the newest packaging technology. Like I see, biodegradable blister packaging now that is filled with nitrogen. They put a little puff of nitrogen in with the buds that help prevent oxidation over time. And so that's, you're paying for that essentially in some way or another in the long run. So yeah, like I said, mid-grade is good. It's probably going to be, $10 to $15 a gram sort of thing, which is, in my opinion, the price point you should be looking for.
And we're talking THC, right? We're talking THC or CBD.
THC, CBD, whatever type of bud you're looking for. Yeah, exactly. The highest CBD number, the highest THC number.
The highest numbers.
Sometimes it might not look the best. It might not be the brightest green or the shiniest crystals. It doesn't mean it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
Just means maybe they didn't use the the crystal growth additive for nutrients while they were growing it or something like that.
For sure.
So
and what would be your take on how these are tested? Like, do we know if the numbers are the numbers, or do we speculate if the numbers are the numbers?
Right. So you're kind of asking how wild is this weed in the West?
Mm-hmm.
It's getting better. It's getting more accurate. At one point in time, you were given a variance of 15%, 7% one way, 7% another way for things like flour,
Mm-hmm.
which is a lot.
Yeah.
You could all of a sudden have something that was 25% show up as 32.
Yeah.
Kind of crazy, kind of illegitimate in my opinion. Testing methods are getting better. The requirements for testing are getting better all the time too. So
Sweet. Well,
don't be afraid to buy it, especially when you get things that are tested with confidence analytics and things like that. They give you little notes and extras for why you should test with them and why you should trust their test results more. And Washington may not be the best state for testing requirements currently. They don't require any heavy metals testing. And it's like I said, it's sort of the Wild West of it all. So
for sure,
maybe you'd get something that's more dead on in Colorado than you would in Washington. But doesn't mean Washington's bad at the same time. Yeah. Not trying to knock anything.
For sure.
Going back to like mid-grade, and we're going to call it mid and bottom tiers. So those are the ones that we're usually dealing with the most. That top tier, I really wouldn't worry about it other than, do you have enough money to pay for it all? If you got the money to pay for it, go ahead and get the top tier. You'll probably find something, that is worth the money eventually. Mm-hmm. And it'll be like, gosh, that's what I'm going to go spend my birthday money on next year.
True.
Something like that. So in terms of like mid and lower tiers, we're probably looking at a lot of times an indoor versus an outdoor crop.
Yeah.
A lot of times outdoor crops get pushed to the side, pushed to the bottom. They're not considered the cream, and they're considered a bottom tier. They do end up leafier sometimes, so you kind of might get a little bit of a lower THC percentage in the end for that reason, because there's more leaf than THC, but it doesn't mean it's a bad bud. It just means maybe you smoke a blunt instead of a joint, and they're probably going to sell it to you cheaper so you can afford to smoke blunts instead of joints all the time at that point.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's older versus newer harvests. Things like oxidizing and terpene loss, and it turns from green to brown. It happens as it gets older, so when they're just really trying to sell it, they'll just sell it cheaper sometimes.
Yeah.
And then even crazier, because I haven't even encountered this in the black market in a long while, but sometimes you find trimmed weed versus untrimmed.
Mm-hmm.
So trimmed is going to be more expensive because there's man hours put into making sure it's all manicured. Untrimmed is going to be cheaper, So
what does that do for the bud?
Trimming it, again, it's kind of like we were saying with the outdoor buds, where you get rid of a lot of that unnecessary leaf content, and you're left with more of the good THC stuff.
Well, there you go. That's why they call it a nug.
Yeah, they also call it trees sometimes too, because you can get yourself a nice coniferous pine tree that looks like your cannabis nug.
Mm-hmm.
All leafy and untrimmed, and then you trim it up and it looks all of a sudden like a suppository or something.
So is shake just leaf?
Shake? Okay, so shake is going to be saved for later because we're going to get to that in this conversation. Don't worry.
Okay, continue.
So, again, with things like indoor and outdoor, you usually have more leaf versus for outdoor. You might not have the best genetics for producing the cannabinoids. You might have genetics that are better for being resistant to pests and more resilient to hot weather or cold weather, depending on your growing climate.
For sure.
You might also be using a heavy amount of pesticides since it's outdoors. That sort of stuff happens. That's why I was mentioning heavy metals and pesticide testing. And unfortunately for outdoor, unfortunately, I'm not sure which way you want to look at it, but unfortunately for greenhouse cannabis, that is included in outdoor bud in Washington state. So if you know a greenhouse, especially those Dutch greenhouses, everything is enclosed.
Mm-hmm.
There's really no outside elements inside a greenhouse except for dirt and sunlight, essentially. Maybe some bugs getting through fans, but not a huge amount. So they are sheltered. They're not exposed to wind and rain the whole time. They're not going to get as moldy as easily in the greenhouse, but they still get classified outdoors. Mm-hmm. So if you find some cannabis in the store that is super cheap because it's outdoors, but then you find that company grows in a Dutch greenhouse, you might want to go keep buying from them if it's super cheap, because it's probably still pretty dang good.
For real.
So again, with buds being outdoors and unrestricted growth and all that sort of thing, you can have huge buds, which are cheaper to produce because there's sunlight and all that sort of things. And again, it becomes cheaper for you in the end in the store. So don't be afraid to go buy outdoor weed. Indoor grows, however, they have more control in the environment. So you might end up with a more controlled product in the end. So with indoor, like I said, everything is controlled. Your humidity, temperature, lights, watering, the size of the pots, so how big the root balls can all get and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. A lot of times with indoor, it's easier to run a hydroponic setup.
Yep.
Just because it's not going to be exposed to more elements. You've got more control over it, like I said. And one of the big issues with indoor grows is it's more expensive. Like, guaranteed, you're paying rent, you're paying building costs, you're paying electricity. So that is going to cascade on down the line for the customers, where you're paying more for indoor buds, like I said. There's environmental impacts with indoor buds. Like I said, you're using electricity. You're using dirt from outside, so you're going to have to get some way to get the dirt inside. That's just taking dirt from outside. That's an impact for environments. Mm-hmm. But it's still good. You got a smaller scale a lot of times with an indoor. You can get denser buds because you can get the nutrients more dialed in and stuff like that. And one big bummer is you can't just let nature do its thing with indoor buds. Sometimes nature is good for cannabis.
Yeah.
It's been doing it in nature for a long time.
Yeah. So what do you think about the land strains, or what do they call them?
Call them landrace, right? Race,
that's what it is. Yeah.
So pure genetics, and I love landrace strains, or 99% or whatever we want to call it nowadays. Yeah. I had this Afghan goo that was really good back in the day, dude. It was killer, perfect sleepy time weed.
Hell yeah.
And I've had some other stuff like lamb's bread, I think is a landrace down from Jamaica, nice and sativa. Mm-hmm. One of my favorites, Durban Poison. Another one of my favorites, Acapulco Gold. All supposedly landrace genetics. And those are sativas. I'm a big sativa head.
I agree. Sativa's the best.
So getting back into the differences of kind of your mid versus bottom tiers, I told you that you can have freshness of harvests, newer versus older. And it's kind of like alcohol, mm-hmm. where, you can have older alcohols that are aged, be good, be stronger, but sometimes they taste a little bit weirder, the color is going to be different. So it's the same thing. Sometimes it gets better with age. Your moisture level will decrease with your older buds, but usually it's not just like an instantaneous thrown in the wind and dried, so you kind of, all those volatile chemicals that are terpenes and cannabinoids will stay intact more easily. They don't degrade. But like I said, the color will change a lot of times. You'll go from green to brown. And that's just normal oxidation. That's why, so oxygen, it's a free radical, it degrades thing. This is a plural, because it's not just cannabis that it degrades, but it's going to turn everything brown. So you get a nice shiny red bottle of whiskey, eventually it turns brown over time.
Yeah.
Because the water is going to leave it. It's going to make it more, what do I want to call it? Concentrated. All
right.
So yeah, that also can affect the taste. It can affect the way it burns. Some people want it fresher. Maybe they want the more bitter, greeny taste versus a smoother, faster burning plant. So
For sure.
But how can you tell how old your cannabis is? Mondo, do you know what happens when your cannabis gets old? Well, we've kind of gone over that a little bit, haven't we?
Yeah.
But,
That's
in
why
Washington, you can't tell how old the weed is.
Yeah.
There's no real labeling for when it was harvested. You have a packaging date. That's the best you can get for the most part. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can get a testing date, mm-hmm. for when the last potency testing and things were done. So that
So
might
do you
give
want to
you.
look for the fresher bud, or can you not? Is your
Again,
eye?
personal preference.
Yeah,
And again, it might have a price point associated with it as well.
true.
So if you're on the cheap,
There you go.
I am one that likes it not fresh, but not old.
Yeah.
Give me a nice 2 to 4 month cure.
So do you think that trimming versus untrimming would affect the prices?
Absolutely. Like I said, it's going through more hands, more man hours. Trimmed is always going to be.
Even if it would be old.
Now, there, I think we're getting into, you know, a fine print sort of thing.
True.
Is it trimmed and old? It might be the same cost as untrimmed and fresh. It might be the same cost as trimmed and outdoors. It might it's again, your mileage may vary, and it's what you're looking for that day. I am a trimmed fan, but if the price point is good enough for me, I'll go get untrimmed.
I like the variety. Just try some things out, see what you like.
Exactly, that's what I was saying. If you have the funds, go try a bunch of different things. Don't be afraid to try new things. But in terms of age, you're just kind of at the mercy of whatever's on the label or whatever the bud tenders, as they like to be called inside the retail stores, can recommend you. Some ways you could tell if you're not inside a dispensary, which doesn't make sense because that doesn't apply to this bit of our conversation about cannabis, but as it gets older, the smells dissipate, volatile chemicals evaporate. It's just oxidation, man.
Yeah.
If you really want to get into it, it's entropy, but that's a little bit more metaphysical. We gotta get high first for that.
I don't even know what entropy means, but all right, I'm gonna have to. I think I do, but I like to look at the definition of the word.
Alexa, what is the definition of entropy?
If you had one, I was gonna be mad.
No, Alexa. You're
Sponsor.
lucky. Your smells are gonna dissipate, which is kind of a bummer because smells are sometimes the best part of cannabis, right?
Yeah, I always say, in my heaven, it smells like weed. It smells like cannabis. It smells like the cannabis plant.
It smells like my apartment.
Yeah. It smells like a freshly loaded bowl that may or may not have been smoked already.
But other crazy things can happen where you can have cannabinoids start degrading into other compounds. So THC and CBD will turn into things like CBC, CBN, other things, and even THCA can be decarboxylated. We discussed decarboxylation last time. Removal of carboxyl atom or molecule allows for more brain barrier interaction, thus you get higher. In general, does weed get worse with trimming? Definitely not. It's usually the opposite, I think. It gets better when it's trimmed. You're smoking less of the big fan leaves, less of the chlorophyll-y stuff. But hey, so real fast.
Is that about trim? Are you mentioning trim now?
Kind of mentioning trim, and we're going to mention shake real fast.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, that's what I meant. Shake, yeah, not trim. See, that's what I was asking.
Shake has kind of two definitions. Traditionally, what I've known shake to be is the bottom of the bits of a jar or the baggie after you've smoked all the nugs out of it, right? So that's all your little tiny leaflets, all your tiny pistils, all your little THC crystals. You gather that up at the bottom, and it's the dankest of your dank. But shake can also be what you trim off of your nugs. It's still very high THC content. Like I've gotten 10-11% from my trim content. Sometimes higher. It's nuts. It all depends on what you start with. But shake is, regardless, what is left after all the nugs are processed, smoked, or trimmed. So yeah, it's the bottom of a large bag of flour. It's all the little bits that have shaken off what I am going to momentarily call premium flour, which is the best parts that you smoke.
Hell yeah.
Does that make sense?
For sure.
So shake, yeah. Shake is cannabis, but it's like pre-ground kind of cannabis. Oh wait, I'm getting too ahead of myself.
So yes.
No, pretend I didn't say pre-ground.
No, don't worry about that. With my analytical mind coming up with these questions, so what we've discussed so far is literally what you can get at a dispensary, which is weed or flower. But you can do so many things with this product. That's what we're gonna go into here. So But I think what most people want to know when you're thinking about this is like what can I go actually like buy like with so much money, or how much is enough for a day, or a week, or what do I want to smoke, what should I smoke, and how do I maximize my purchases, like how am I getting my bang for my buck, because we've been talking about the potency, and you're saying if you have the funds, so it's like you kind of wondering what's there, and what do we do with that?
So let's see here. So I'm going to just start anecdotally, personally.
Mm-hmm.
How do you make sure you've got what you need for the day or the week, and how do you maximize your purchase? Personally, I like to buy it in bulk, kind of like a Costco card style. Just because I tend to smoke a fair amount. I can smoke anywhere between like a gram and an eighth in a day sometimes. So I'm a heavy smoker, and I want to get a bulk deal. But this is, again, your mileage may vary. I love that phrase, and it's very specific to this cannabis. But it's kind of, what is it that you need to get high? Look at that. Focus on that.
Well, yeah. That's what.
So, like, are you a heavy user like me? You're going to want heavy THC. Are you a lightweight? You're probably not going to want a heavy THC. You're going to want something that's, a low THC and maybe high CBD.
And lightweight for the noobs, it also kind of means beginner.
Beginner, yeah.
I mean, if you want to go straight into it, go straight into it. Some people, most people, kind of do.
I always say you can always add more, but you can't take it back when you're dealing with the drug.
Right, that's a good rule there.
But again, just remember, it's just a drug. It'll go away eventually. You do not break yourself. You do not break your brain. You're not crazy, no matter what.
I always like
maybe you are crazy, but not because of cannabis.
You can't, or you physically are not able to overdose.
No, overdose is impossible,
and that is great.
But
I mean, there are definitely bad side effects. That might be a different episode, but
yeah, there's some side effects that might be negative. I don't know if they're bad.
They're not bad.
But you've talked about enjoying the anxiety that
I love the anxiety. Yeah.
Me personally, I could do without that.
I don't know. When my heart rate doubles and I'm like, whoa, I'm like,
who said that?
No, I just like it. It makes me feel like I'm more alive. It's like when you're driving a fast car or something. You're like, whoa, this is nice, Or like on a bike, you're cruising and you're mom.
Okay, you like the adrenaline associated.
It's not. Yeah, I guess it's adrenaline. It's more just like, I don't know. It's like, whoa, my heart rate's still. I don't know. It's weird. It's like, it's beating You're beating faster.
You're funny. When I go to buy a large quantity, I'm looking for a deal, Mondo. They're everywhere. You can find them on the magazines and the websites and inside the stores. Some stores have like member mailing lists that you can get on. They'll text you when they have a deal, or they email you when you have a deal. You can get points. I don't know if Washington does points rewards anymore. So they don't want anybody to get anything for free with cannabis. So it's kind of weird. And always don't be afraid, especially if you're in a legal state, go for a drive. If you're not in a legal state, maybe you're going for a far drive anyways.
Yeah.
But look for those deals when you get there. Sometimes, like Portland prices, dude, are insanely cheap. $40 to $60 for an ounce of indoor.
Damn.
Right? So maybe I like to go to Portland.
Yeah. For sure.
So this is, we're starting to get into some of the other types of flower you can find in a dispensary now, though. There is the pre-ground flower, so when you smoke flower, sometimes you can grind it up with the machine.
Most times you're grinding it.
Fancy Mondo always grinding his cannabis.
Even if you're hand grinding it.
Yeah, I'd pick it apart with my hands.
That's what I'm talking. That's still grinding to me.
Oh, okay. So
to a degree, you're breaking it down. We're
gonna go from the finest method of grinding to the least finest method of grinding.
That's the OG grinding. That's what you should be doing with your fingers.
OG grinding is breaking it in half and stuffing it in your bong.
Or in a joint.
You've never... No. I literally mean, Mondo, crack
That's what I'm
stuff.
saying. Yeah.
Now, you don't crack stuff into a joint, though,
I guess. True.
So...
You got... All right. Yeah, you got facts there. You do it the true way. Just...
So with your premium buds, whether it be mid grade, bottom grade, top grade, tier, whatever you want to call that, You're going to want to grind it a lot of times before you smoke it. Before you roll it, before you smoke it, whatever you're going to do. And you can use a little hand grinder. You can use I've used my electric coffee grinder when I've had a large quantity to bake up and stuff like that.
Scissors.
Not that I recommend it because it really grinds the shit out of it. Am I?
Scissors, knife.
No, don't scissors and knife it. There's got to be better solutions.
Really?
Really, seriously, don't scissors and knife it.
All right, I guess there you go.
Yeah, electric coffee grinder or whatever electric grinder. If you really want to grind the crap out of it, you can use a hand-powered grinder. They're obviously handheld size, and you just have teeth in the middle that chew the cannabis up and will sometimes deposit it out, and sometimes you'll have to knock it out from in between the teeth after it chews it all up. So sometimes you can buy that already ground and chewed up for you and put into a bag, so you just pinch it and pack it and puff it.
Oh, nice.
Super easy.
That's great.
Yeah, you can put it in blunts, joints, bowls, pipes. So
we're talking like, they sell blunts and joints and.
So there is no blunts because tobacco is not allowed in dispensaries in Washington
What if
State.
it's a cannabis leaf?
Then it's allowed, and that's a cannagar. But we're going to talk about cannagars later.
That. All right.
So really, that's kind of more or less the realm of flower. There are some sorts of kind of concentrates from flower, you might call it. You can have infused pre-rolls, which kind of means you have dabs that are either on the inside or the outside of a pre-roll. Pre-roll being a joint that's been rolled for you inside of a store that you bought. They might not be licked shut. They have machine rolled.
They just put the oil in the weed.
So yeah, they might just like put a little worm of oil right in the middle of it, or maybe they'll just ring it around the outside.
Hell yeah.
And that also includes keef. So keef can also be used as a concentrate for pre-rolls.
Keef is the shit.
And don't forget, there's also something called caviar or moon rocks. You ever heard of that, Mondo?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was telling we should do that.
Oh gosh, that'd be crazy. Have you smoked it ever? It's kind of a pain in the butt.
I would assume that'd be the one that you'd really want to just
crack in half and stuff in the bong.
Chop it with something and stick it in.
Oh my gosh.
Smoke it. I never even thought about that.
Oh, so
that's horrible.
What it is though, what caviar and moon rocks is, it's a nug that's been dipped in a dab oil, BHO honey oil, and that's rolled in keef. So it's like a super sticky nug. It's got trichomes all over it, and it's just kind of turns into a mess sometimes.
Damn.
But it's a very expensive product, kind of that top tier thing that if you want it, you're gonna get it. After moon rocks, there is another kind of form of flower concentrate that we have. We're gonna call this stuff keef or dry sift. The dry sift is an all flower concentrate. It's solventless as well. So what that means is it is extracted with no solvents. Solvents are chemicals that are used to extract THC and other cannabinoids from the flowers. So this, and they can sometimes be potentially harmful to the human body. So one of the great things about keef is it's solventless, and means there's no harm potentially to your body other than cannabis, like maybe you're allergic to it or something. So, and in addition to keef, that's sort of kind of a catalyst towards full melt as well as sometimes rosin. So the keef and the dry sift is you want it to be as pure of resin glands from THC. Resin glands being the little crystals or trichomes that grow on the leaves. Those are little sticky glands of resin that contain cannabinoids and terpenes separate from the plant matter. The plants are crazy. Like you have little, I have oil glands on your face and stuff like that. The pores that do this. Plants have the same sort of mechanism for producing that. But
so those are all concentrates. There's that's a lot.
It's sort of we're not even at concentrates. Don't worry. We'll explain more about resin glands and things in another episode. I kind of want to save it for when we do a dissection of the plant and its parts and everything. To make the dry sift, the nugs are rubbed or rolled around against a screen, very small holes measuring in the microns, usually around 50 to 150. So that's how you make the dry sift, and the smaller the micron holes, the more pure it ends up being in the end. I don't know, do you have anything else with that, or can I keep going? Let's keep going.
Yeah.
So you asked about cannagars.
Mm-hmm.
Cannagars are a blunt or cigar made from entirely 100% cannabis. You take the big leaves from the fan leaves. Sometimes they're dried out and cured so you can roll them. And then you will roll it around nugs that are ground, or sometimes they're like moon rocks, or sometimes there's concentrate. Cannagars are crazy. They're like an ounce of cannabis normally. So it's going to be expensive. That's one of those primo things that you like buy for your birthday party or whatever. And yeah, that's more or less all the flower that we have. So moving on from flower is concentrates.
Yeah.
And gosh, there are just so many options for concentrates here, Mondo. But biggest one of concentrates are dabs.
Oh, I got mine right here. I got a dab. Hold on. Yeah.
Derb.
That's how I dab. I don't.
None of that. Yeah, I guess I'm just not that cool.
No, I'm just kidding. You know, my joke about the dab was always like, why do they dab like this when they should be dabbing like, you know, like that. Like that's what you feel like when you take a dab.
No, I'm definitely like.
Yeah, true. I guess. Suffered.
But besides dabs, you've also got tinctures, which could also be just, you know, some sort of substance with dabs added to it.
Yeah.
And what are tinctures? What do they do?
Well, we kind of talked about them in like edibles. You know, you can use them for edibles.
Kind of can use it for edibles, but we're going to cover them more in detail in a minute. So, what kind of extracts can you buy? So, for dabs, dabs are concentrates, we're going to call it. You have solventless and solvent extraction. Solventless kind of includes less parts or less things that you make with solventless. So let's start with that.
Yeah, like
Keef, right?
Yeah.
Like we said before. So it's mechanical separation of trichomes from your plant matter. Like I said, you just rub it around. And you can refine it further and further, up to maybe 15 microns for the smallest. And so that's a lot of resin glands that you end up with. So
and there's more ways to get solventless extracts.
Right. But to continue with that, we have full melt.
Oh, okay.
Full melt's a type of keef or a type of bubble hash that is a dab. It's not just something you might put on flowers. It's given a star rating or an asterisk rating of 1 through 5. I think I actually saw 1 through 6 recently. But I think the higher the star, the better it is. I should have done more research into this before we started discussing it. But yeah, the full melt gets a star rating. 1 is the poorest quality, a 5 or 6 star being a totally full melt, perfect for dabbing. There is no miscellaneous fats or waxes or plant matter. 3 or 4 stars, I guess, is technically considered half melt, and that is something that you would use for another type of solventless extraction, which is rosin. Rosin is when you have a very, very high pressured press that you can put your bud or keef into. Keef is kind of preferred because you end up with a better product at the end, but you press it in between this rosin and the press, and it has pressure plates that are slightly heated as well. So what it gives you is kind of an almost activated dab. It's been heated and pressed away, and you're just given goopy. Looks like goop, dude.
Have you seen that guy who does the hash in that like little like mixer thing or something? Super weird. He because essentially what you're saying is like you almost could like if you had hands strong enough and hot enough, you could, you know, press hash.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so hash is something we'll talk about in just a minute. Let me go back. I'm getting ahead of myself with the rosin even right now. But
yeah, for sure. But
let me go back to the full melt. Full melt is also made from bubble hash. Bubble hash is a solventless technically because it's made with water, H2O. We don't consider water a solvent because it's not potentially dangerous, I think, is why we think that. But anyways, Cannabis doesn't dissolve in cold water. You can grind your cannabis, mix it with the literal ice and water, and then what you'll do is strain the sluice. That's what it's called, sluice.
Sloosh?
Sluice.
Are you sure it's not sloosh?
Sluice.
Sloosh sounds like a word. They both sound
strain
like
the
words.
sluice through the Keef style screens that we were talking about,
Yeah.
different micron holes, and
Microns.
finer micron holes get you finer cannabis material at the end, right? So,
For sure.
and both of these are kind of similar to diamonds, which are a solvent made extract. It's a dab. It looks like crack. Basically because they're full in THCA.
Mm-hmm.
It's not decarboxylated, but this is a full spectrum extract. It's got a full cannabinoid profile, all the terpenes, and diamonds don't have that. And we're gonna come back to a little bit more about diamonds in a minute, but you can take the flower and the keef and make rosin, like I said, rosin, R-O-S-I-N, rosin. Not the same as resin, R-E-S-I-N, resin.
Is resin an extract?
Resin is an extract, but it is a solvent extract.
Mm-hmm.
Rosin has been squished in the press, like I said, with some heat applied to the pressing plates, like I said. Generally not enough to fully decarboxylate it, but the forces of the heat and the pressure especially cause the resin on the plant to liquefy and pour out over the sides of the press. Very gooey, very smelly, very tasty. Rosin is not a solvent. It's a solventless extract. It's not made of solvents. Resin is a solvent extract. But you were asking about hands, kind of doing the same thing as the rosin press will do. And yeah, hand hash is a type of hash. It's one of the original forms of cannabis smoking was you would roll the buds in between your hands, and your hands would get all goopy with the resin. You'd peel and squish and push around that resin off your hands. You'd peel it off. You'd smoke that. You'd smoke the hand hash. You have scissor hash.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anything that gets touched by cannabis has hash on it. So hand hash is good, Mondo.
Hell yeah.
Don't be afraid.
Hell yeah.
But like I said, solventless is good because there isn't anything scary like residual butane or alcohol in your dabs that may end up being vaporized and ingested. But that's all the solventless.
So what are the other kinds of hash? There's like scissor hash?
Scissor hash, hand hash.
Hand hash.
Keef can be pressed into a hash.
Okay. Sweet.
So keef press is hash.
So what will we cover for solvent extracts then?
Solvent extracts are generally made with, well, we're going to say hydrocarbons, which includes alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
There's carbon dioxide, CO2. There's an alcohol, like I said, and then there's ether, which is also a hydrocarbon, but it's its own little thing. They have multiple types of ether extractions now, which is kind of crazy, but to think about for me, just because ether is such a weird chemical in general. You always think about people getting high on it. So,
pretty trippy.
Hydrocarbon, generally is butane, propane, pentane, any of those anes. Right. And scientifically, the suffix ane means a chain of carbons and hydrogens.
And what do those produce?
How's that?
What's using these hydrocarbons on the plant produce for the solvent?
Oh, gotcha.
Using as a solvent.
So generally shatters and wax is what you're looking at with the hydrocarbons such as butane and propane. Just note, you're going to look for, if you're going to be doing this yourself, dear God, don't do this yourself. But if you're looking at the stores, let's say, you're going to want something that has been extracted with a very pure and refined hydrocarbon. So that avoids all sorts of contaminations and adulterants, other miscellaneous propellants that may be in your extract in your hydrocarbon vessel. And so, yeah, you know, roast things come when it's a 91% versus a 99%. Lost my notes. Sorry, real fast here. So yeah, like we said, shatters and waxes. Shatters and waxes, they can be de-waxed after extraction with an alcohol. This is sometimes called winterization because there's a freezing process that is associated with it. Gives you a higher THC percentage, but you lose a lot of your terp content during the purging and things like that. So
For sure.
not always the greatest. Also note that shatters and waxes, hydrocarbons, are generally not decarb unless it is a distillate. And decarboxylation is a process of distillation, so it just kind of goes hand in hand. You can't avoid it a lot of times. For hydrocarbons, like I said, there's shatter. Shatter has a hard consistency. Generally, you only use a heat and a vacuum pump for the purge. There's no such stirring or agitation, which helps release the gases and things faster. It's done so that you get a solid shatter product at the very end.
Yeah.
It can take a long time to purge properly, especially with the lower temps, which allow it to hold on to its volatile terpenes and cannabinoids longer.
Yeah.
So, yeesh, my notes are going crazy right now. Sorry. So that is going to mean why shatter is sometimes very expensive, very top tier cannabis product. You know, you can get shatter that's a lower end. It's usually going to be a different clarity. Maybe it's not as tasty, but things like clarity and taste are affected by, you know, temperatures used for purging, the starting material. If you got crappy starting material, you might end up with crappy end product. And also, how long was the solvent, or how long was it extracted in the solvent for, may determine its final consistency
How long
as
it
well.
was blasted? How long?
Yeah, exactly. How long you blasted it for. Mano, you'd asked me before, I know, if the smells affect your oil.
Yeah.
At the end.
Yeah, environment. Yeah.
So kind of. So when we say smells, we're talking terpenes, right?
For sure.
So higher terpenes can make your dabs runnier. They change consistency. It's just, like I said, terpenes are volatile. They evaporate more easily, and so things like that make it harder for a shatter to become crystallized and stay in that crystallized formation, because crystallized formations, they don't have a lot of energy. Volatile compounds, they got a lot of energy.
Well,
so
my actual question was, my note was like, I blasted oil and it was really piney out because it was like near a bunch of trees, and I felt like that smell kind of went into the taste. But I think you were actually saying that it wouldn't actually like absorb that because it's letting off fumes, it's not taking in them or something like that.
Well, potentially. I don't know if the trees would be giving off enough terpenes for it to be, you know... Excuse me. I don't know if the trees would have enough terpenes for it to be like condensing in your product at the end in a noticeable manner. But I think that, especially if your collection vessel was out in the open or something like that, that you may have adulterated product where, shit, yeah, trees might do it, but even like cutting the lawn might do it too. Well,
another thought in my mind is, you know, if somebody who's doing it at a grow op or whatever, that makes oil wherever they manufacture it, like if it's really clean, you know, the alcohol smell or whatever glove smell might make it. That's why, because sometimes I feel like I smoke stuff and it's like medicine-y. It's like
I
doctor's
don't,
office shit.
In my opinion, this is kind of conjecture, but I don't think that you would have tainting like that so easily.
Yeah, true.
You know,
control it more.
Where one peel of the dab off the sheet with the gloved hand isn't going to adulterate that dab with the glove.
All right. Well,
kind of. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense.
But don't quote me on that. Maybe the last gloves to come out of China were really funky.
Yeah. And so, like, with purging, is it like there's like maximum time you want to purge something, or like a minimum time? Like, how do you regulate like the times on that? Because I know when I was telling you about this time that I blasted oil, you were like, I would have left it in the tube, We just ran it through the tube.
Right. So okay. So there's that. That's extraction. That's extracting when you're blasting it into the tube before you let it pour out. That is extraction time. So shorter extraction times will get you a better clarity product and different types of cannabinoids out of it, but it won't extract as much out of it.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
In terms of purge time though, and that's, dude, we're talking for extraction times, talking a couple of minutes to a couple of hours generally. For purging times, you're talking a couple of hours to a couple of days.
Yeah, to let it
all purge out,
yeah.
depending on your methods. Like I said, if you have a high vacuum, high temp, shorter time, low vacuum, low temp, longer time. But to make that time decrease, you can do something like whip it and agitate it. So whip is another type of dabs. It's another type of hydrocarbon dabs. You're going to whip it a lot of times just to get it to unagitate. And Mondo, it's almost 7:10. I want to take a dab for 7:10. So I'm going to go grab the equipment real fast.
For sure.
Is it 7:10? 7:10. Let's do a dab real fast. Yes, I know. The mic will pick this up like hella. Just so you know, whip is sometimes done to agitate your extract and make it purge a little bit faster. So, yes, it is kind of like stirring. Sometimes, if you did a long extraction, you got a runny consistency, you might agitate it and stir it to purge faster because it's going to be a runny consistency no matter what happens in the end. Is your dab runny? Maybe it was a whip.
Yeah.
The reason it gets so runny is because there is a lot of tiny, tiny air bubbles that gets mixed into your dabs. And that makes it more like buttery, kind of like actual butter. And it'll sometimes give it a little bit of a lighter color as well. So, yeah, tiny little air bubbles gets you your buttery whip. There is also crumble dab. So far we've got your shatter, you got your whip, and now we're into crumble. It's kind of created in a manner similar to shatter. Sometimes there is a mixture of solvents that you might use that contain moisture or something weird. It can be done at a slower, lower purge, less heat, less pressure. That'll give you that crumble consistency. When I say crumble, it's like little bits of cookie dough kind of that are you find in your ice cream or something.
Breadcrumbs, yeah.
Yeah, like breadcrumbs. There's that. Mondo, brilliant. God, I'm glad I have you here.
Yeah, breadcrumbs, because that's what I always think when I fucking try to get a dab of that shit. I'm like, why is it breaking apart?
Breadcrumbs, like Mondo said. Brilliant analogy there. So yeah, that is crumble. And it can vary in color, yellow, clear, brown, whatever. So up next we have something called honeycomb, somewhat similar to the crumble. It's done as a hot extract, so sometimes, which means you're going to use hot butane or something like that, and it can be done without any temperatures during a purge, but generally what I've learned, you vacuum purge it and it causes it to like bubble and boil and expand, and as long you just find the right mix of bubbling and boiling and expanding and cooling at the right time to get a honeycomb in the end.
Nice.
So it's just a special method of extraction and extraction and purging. There is also something called pull and snap. It's a hydrocarbon extract. Let me go back. So before pull and snap, we have something after honeycomb called oil. It's also called earl. And what it is a generally very terpy, almost soup-like sort of hash oil. The solvent a lot of times has been left to extract a long time. And like I said, that gives you a runnier consistency because you're getting more cannabinoids and things pulled off. You also kind of get more of the hydrocarbon mixed in with your extract, so you're going to want to have to purge it and do different things for purging, and that affects its end product. The purge and the extract. Those are the two big determinants of what you're going to end up with.
Yeah.
So generally, I'm guessing a lot of times this is going to be agitated during purge as well.
Yeah.
So moving on to the Poland Snap. Poland Snap, it's an extract made with hydrocarbons with a consistency somewhere between like shatter and the Earl oil that we were talking about. So you can like pull it off with a sudden force and it'll like snap off, and found out that's called a non-Newtonian solid, I think, where it's like a lot of times it's really goopy, and you apply pressure and it solidifies. So it's kind of like that. This pull and snap, it's really goopy until you just like snap it apart really fast and it'll chunk off in your hands.
Like Play-Doh. Not Play-Doh, like, what's that?
More like a silly putty kind of, I guess.
That's what I'm thinking of, yeah.
I think silly putty is a non-Newtonian solid now that you mention it. It's kind of like a soft shatter, I guess. It breaks, but also bends. It's kind of a phenomena. I don't think I can explain the science behind it all, snapping and also bending. Yeah, kind of just a shrug emoji.
Yeah.
We have live resin. R-E-S-I-N. Resin. Not rosin. R-O-S-I-N. Resin. We have flour that has been flash frozen immediately after harvesting. Helps ensure conservation of those volatile compounds that I keep mentioning. And then it's extracted with hydrocarbons immediately. Usually that is a very, very cold extract again. Helps preserve everything as much as possible. And I find it most often made into a crumble.
Yeah.
Just because that or shattered. And that's like one of those two ways that you have all those terpenes that you're trying so hard to preserve by all this flash freezing stuff in the best condition as possible, so that your dab is the tastiest thing in the end. You can make it into different end products, but again, the whole reason for doing live resin could be lost with other methods of extract.
For sure.
Just as a note to throw out there, the Washington law for most solvents allows for, and again, this is kind of in general because I think there's a couple that are 3,000 ppms or 1,000 ppms, but in general are allowed 5,000 ppms of residual solvent in your dabs. ppms, Mondo?
Parts per million.
Parts per million. So if you have million parts of THC, we're just going to throw out a best case laboratory scenario, right? Never going to find it outside of the scientific. If you have 1 million parts of THC, you're allowed a certain amount of your hydrocarbon extract inside that THC. Like I said, one of the reasons for concern with solvent extract is that you have residuals of the extract ending up in your dabs, which you're ending up ingesting while you vaporize or smoke it or eat it or whatever you end up doing. And that could be detrimental to your health, especially in large doses. Knowing...
That turned off, it's done. Tained soup.
Yeah, they call it tained soup sometimes, right? When it's not purged all the way. So the reason that is dangerous, 5,000 parts in 1 million parts of THC could be butane or whatever else. Atmospherically, you're breathing in somewhere, I believe, between, I think just shy of 1,000 parts per million of things like CO2. And that could be good, it could be bad. And you're going to be breathing in other things at the same time too. Is butane and methane and pentane and whatever the hell else we're using for hydrocarbon extraction found in your atmosphere? Not so much generally. So you don't have to worry about it in nature. But just throwing the devil's advocate out in this conversation. And conversation of dabs and extracts and solvent-based extracts.
Boom.
We're going to go into carbon dioxide dabs next. CO2 dabs. CO2 dabs are nice because they are, in general, safer than hydrocarbons. It has been cleared by the Food and Drug Administration of the United States to be food safe, so you can like eat it and with whipped cream and stuff like that.
Hell yeah.
It is a naturally occurring compound. Like I said, CO2 is found in the atmosphere in parts of the hundreds per million.
Plants put it off, or they take it. I forget which one it is. They take it in.
Humans breathe it out.
Okay.
Humans breathe it out. Excuse me.
Yeah, that tells you how healthy it is.
And plants will breathe it in. So, and there's other things like volcanoes that put out CO2.
Roger.
In regards to the taste, because that's one of the things people are wondering right off the bat. Does it taste better? Does it taste worse than hydrocarbon extracts, such as shatter made with butane?
Yeah.
Sometimes it can taste better. Sometimes it can taste worse. It's, dependent on the extract method and your starting product a lot of times. Sometimes terpenes are added back in to the product. They could be in weird levels, or they could be badly sourced, poorly sourced. They could be poor, mixtures of terpenes.
Yeah.
Because you can buy terpenes in jars and, make little ratios of them. You have, for CO2 dabs, unwinterized CO2 extract, which are dependent on the extraction method. They are often sold as a wax or butter, kind of like the whip. They have a lower THC content because they have not been refined as much. They just have less THC in them. They have other non-THC materials, fats and waxes from the plant in there still.
Yeah.
Lipids, we call them. There are a few different types of CO2 extracts that can be produced. Supercritical kind of gets you a thicker, lighter, peanut buttery. Subcritical is more oily, darker. You could take a subcritical and then supercritical. I think it's called a sub-supercritical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know.
That's
So
awesome.
original. And you get further extractions.
Hell yeah. So what is winterizing?
So before I go on to winterizing, because we're only doing unwinterized, so we don't have to worry about it at this point. But before that, supercritical, right?
Yeah.
I know that's a big, kind of weird word for CO2. And supercritical means that it's a state for the fluid where it's not a gas, it's not a liquid either. It's put under pressure, sometimes temperatures, to get it to this phenomena of a state that we call a supercritical fluid. And subcritical is basically CO2 not in a supercritical state.
That makes sense.
Right? I hope so.
That clears it up.
So, you asked, Mondo, ask it again.
What is winterizing then?
Winterizing is an extract that has been mixed with alcohol, oftentimes ethanol because it's very food safe. And then it's deep frozen. And this process separates out your fats and waxes and lipids from the cannabinoids, which is anything that is extracted from the plant that is not THC, essentially. You have cellulose, which is what makes up the plant's cell walls. That's a lipid of a sort, so that breaks down and gets extracted. You can filter out your chlorophyll from it in the end, but you end up with a lot of other things like that, and that's all your other things.
So what you're looking for is your THC, CBD, and stuff like the terpenes.
Yeah, generally, the terpenes too, right?
Yeah.
So when you mix it with the alcohol and you winterize it, you can remove all that. You have product that is now purged and usually distilled, and that'll get you a clear distillate. Clear being like that brand called Clear. It's super clear, 99% a lot of times. You can distill it multiple times, each time refining it and getting a higher THC percentage, easily hitting the 90s.
Oh yeah.
On a second pass, third pass, 99 sometimes. Sometimes terpenes are reintroduced. They can be isolated, and a full spectrum terpene from cannabis could be reintroduced into your distillate.
Mm-hmm. This all means price too.
Again, the more times you're distilling it, the more times you're adding terpenes, the more times it's a full spectrum terpene, the more it's going to cost. But the better it might be in the end too.
Yeah, for sure.
You can isolate terpenes from flowers and fruits, and that's a thing that happens, and that's like a non-full spectrum terpene that you can reintroduce.
Oh yeah.
So that kind of covers your CO2 extracts for the most part. You can get those in vape cartridges. You can get them in edible distillate forms, I think. Because distillate is activated, and you can eat it very easily and get super stoned.
Hell yeah.
Be careful eating distillate if you do. Because you can glob yourself eating it just like you can glob yourself dabbing it.
Yeah.
You can get wrecked.
Rolled up. Yeah, for sure.
So, moving on. We have alcohol extracts. Ethanol extracts, usually. You can get it shatter type extracts. You can get pull and snap, sometimes crumbles. Again, like hydrocarbon, other sorts. It kind of depends on your purge methods, vacuuming, temperatures, etc. And usually it matches the other types of hydrocarbon extracts in potency.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if we didn't mention, is 50s, 60s-ish, 30s, 70s sometimes.
Yeah.
Might be decarbed for purging prior to extract. It also might be, during purge, it might be decarbed, and it might be decarbed prior to extraction just to get a fuller extraction out for the alcohol.
So, can you, mix and match, the way you extract oils?
Between,
methods.
Between a butane and a CO2?
Yeah.
Not necessarily, no. You can distill just about any of them.
Yeah.
You cannot... I don't believe you can take a butane extract and run it through a CO2 extractor. But why would you?
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
So...
I don't think they'd be very consistent.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't try and mix any of it.
And then you were talking about ether earlier?
Yeah,
what is
ether.
That?
So this is something that was popularized by Rick Simpson oil, or what is also called Phoenix tears. But ether is a difficult solvent to source, and it oftentimes produces a thick, dark oil, which is not entirely desirable for a lot of people. So this is a very oftentimes patient a patient's dabs or patient's extract. The last tutorial I read online was to use something called naphtha. Naphtha. It's a mineral spirit that you use as like a paint thinner, I guess.
Weird.
Right? But so is using butane.
This is true. That's facts.
So
actually, see, this is the thing.
It's like an alcohol kind of.
So, but I was asking this earlier when I asked about resin being an extract. I think what I actually meant to ask is reclaim an extract.
Like, sort of, but it was already an extract before it became reclaimed, so...
Well, for weed. You know, like the black tar you get from weed? Weed reclaim? Like, or what would you call that? Not reclaim. Is that just resin?
Oh, yeah, the gross bowl resin.
Yeah. And I guess technically, I guess that is just
Yeah, it's
resin.
like a tarry resin, I guess I would call it,
So
if we had to be specific.
So they're both, tar. That's important. That's why I brought it up. What does tar mean?
So we did tar when we were discussing edibles. It's total aerosol residues. So it's like, it's an
There you go.
residue of your aerosol. It's like a tarry resin, is what I would call it.
Oh, there you go. Brought that back up. Yeah.
Is that an extract?
A very
No.
low dose one. If anything.
I'm getting sick thinking about it, man. Oh.
Yo, I had some times where I didn't have weed. Leave me alone.
We all did, Mondo. Yeah. We all did. Thank God for recreational, I guess.
For sure. So continue on with what else there's left for.
Alright, no, I mean, like, dude, I think we got through all the
extracts.
hydrocarbons, almost, sort of. Yeah, we did the four big dab types that I was discussing.
Okay. Yeah.
Alcohol, ether, CO2, and
Concentrates,
hydrocarbons.
I guess you call that, right?
Yeah, sort of concentrates.
Okay,
So
there you go.
there's only a little bit more that we're going to talk about being in stores right now. And like I said, this is all found in stores. If you don't find it in your store, find another store that has it. There's multiple stores. Sometimes you could look at menus online. Sometimes you can call them. Sometimes you can order ahead and have it waiting for you.
You can go on Leafly. Not that I'm sponsoring them. You know, there's other sites. You can talk to your bud tenders. Because
Ask us.
Well, that's not. Yeah, a lot of people. You know, they smoke the weeds. You shoot us a message. We'll tell you the good spots. People are willing to help you out. It's a weed community. I mean.
Yeah, no one's met an angry stoner.
Yeah.
I'm angry but honest when I'm stoned.
Yeah.
Taking a breather.
Feel it.
Very nice. All right. So beyond those products that you can find in what else that can you find in stores? Tinctures, like we talked about with the edibles.
Yo.
It's mostly an edible cannabis concentrated into it. Usually an alcohol extraction, but things like distillate may be added and diluted or not diluted, but mixed in. What the hell am I looking for, Mondo? Dissolved.
Dissolved.
Yeah, dissolved into there.
For sure.
So like I said, it's usually an alcohol, but there is a glycerin/glycerol that is used. And if you don't know, glycerin is sweet as fuck. So you can actually make a glycerol alcohol mixture. And this is what you've been puffing on out of that box all night, called propylene glycol.
Yum.
Gives you big fat clouds and tastes sweet as hell, right?
Yeah.
So propylene glycol can be made for your tinctures, obviously.
Yep.
Tinctures can sometimes be faster than other edibles, and that is because they can be ingested sublingually. Sub means under, lingual means tongue, kind of. So you do it under the tongue, there's lots of veins and capillaries under there for quick absorption into your bloodstream, and sometimes it could take, 20 minutes. It should be 20 minutes. So again, be careful. That is decarbed cannabis.
Hell yeah.
Again, THCA into THC so you can absorb it and metabolize it and get high.
Fuck yeah.
Sometimes it's clear, it could be gold, green, brown. Dropper form, spray form. That's tinctures.
Uh-huh.
I like the glycerin tinctures. Some people like the alcohol ones because I think the alcohol makes it absorb a little bit faster, but damn, it burns a lot of times or it doesn't taste that good.
So before this last one here, obviously we covered edibles, so if you haven't checked out the edibles video and
oh my gosh, thank you for
recording.
reminding me, Manda.
Yeah. Shout out to that first video. Go listen to that.
Yeah, edibles
back.
has a lot of things. There's a lot of edibles that you can eat and make. Candy,
Yeah.
Rice Krispie treats,
All types of
gummy bears, sodas.
If you ask about edibles, we're not going to respond because
Yeah, there's a thing for
been
it.
covered.
But the last one, that's kind of a big old what the fuck. is topicals. How do they work? Might have to say that for another time. You just put them on your skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Complex things, you know.
Yeah.
The human body and chemicals and
yeah.
That's it's another metaphysical thing, I feel like, almost.
Anatophysiology.
Yeah.
But again, they go on the skin and they get absorbed into the bloodstream a lot of times, so they work like that. They'll hit receptors for CB1s and CB2s, which are part of your endocannabinoid system. It's part of your body. It's kind of like a nervous system or lymphatic system. It's just part of your body has receptors all over to absorb cannabis. Gets into the brain, gets into the stomach lining a lot of times very easily, and it just locally helps out some aches and pains sometimes. Oftentimes it's rich in CBDs and other things besides just THC. CBDs actually interact with opioid receptors.
So is weed an opiate? Or?
No, weed is not an opiate, but it can actually affect the way your body works with and produces and interacts with opioids. So like your brain and parts of your body can absorb opioids, and this might have blocked the opioid absorption and might prevent it from being released and reabsorbing again and reactivating. Crazy things with the brain. I'm not a brain guy necessarily, obviously.
Yeah, right.
Mondo.
The THC's for the brain.
But still, it's all on Wikipedia and things, and we'll get into it eventually, I'm sure. Don't worry.
Yeah.
So topicals, we have them lotions, like Lubriderm. You have them as salves, which is like an icy hot kind of thing. Sprays, like a Vicks spray, maybe. You have shampoos and conditioners. There's patches. There's gels. There's lip balms. There's personal lubricants that are topicals.
Nice. That'd be cool.
And, this can contain fresh cannabis extracts, decarboxylated extracts. Both of them have great medicinal benefits. Again, something that we'd have to get into at another time. But I think that's everything. Any other questions? I don't think so.
No.
Do we have a sign-off yet?
We do not have a sign-off.
Oh my gosh.
We need a sign-off.
Can we come up with one and just edit it in?
Yeah, we could definitely do that.
Alright, so, just to cover it all real fast, Mondo. You have flower. You have dabs of all sorts. You have tinctures. You have topicals. That's the big ones that you can get in the store. Oh, and don't forget edibles.
And edibles.
And edibles. So, that's what we've got for Cannabis Conversations this time. We just want to thank you again. We are Mucho Macho Muchacho Mondo.
Mondo.
I am Doc Otto Dude Dan.
Doctor.
Go ahead and check out our other episodes. We look forward to talking with you again next time.
Yeah, come back. Let us know what you think.